Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks in a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business at paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about the subject of reverse sexism and the subject of reverse ageism in the workplace. And in the subject of reverse sexism, this is where a woman who is a manager or a part of human resources decides to express her biases towards men in the workplace. And in the case of reverse ageism, this is where a group of older people decide to express their biases against a man in the workplace who is younger. Now, I have experienced the whole concept of reverse sexism in the workplace, and this again is where a woman expresses her own personal biases against a man in the workplace. And black men, we oftentimes have to deal with this kind of discrimination because oftentimes a lot of women in the workplace, whether they be white, black, or non-black, oftentimes express their own personal biases against black men in the workplace. Now, many of these women will express their biases in the workplace because they are emotional, and because they're emotional, they oftentimes bring a lot of their own personal issues into the workplace, and oftentimes they project and transpose those issues onto men, especially black men in the workplace. So I've run into this when I would go on interviews and I would have to deal with females who are interviewing me, and sometimes these women, because they've had issues with men in their own personal lives, would do things with their body language like roll their eyes or kind of scowl at me when I would enter into the workplace to do an interview. And some white women would express their racism towards me during an interview. And this is what happens because, again, a lot of these women, they have a real issue with especially black men in the workplace. And oftentimes because they've had issues with men in the past, what they do is project their issues onto the man that's being interviewed or on other men in the workplace. So they'll go out of their way to express their biases towards the man, and they will oftentimes do things like expressing their anger towards a man, but that man had done nothing to them, but they're trying to get back at a guy who hurt them in either their personal lives or some other boss who they can't go out here and attack directly, so they go out here and passive aggressively go after you. So I have run into that in the workplace, and I've had to deal with these types of women in the workplace when they have their issues. Again, some of these women have had issues in their personal lives, and some of these women have had issues in their professional lives, and they go out here, and because they can't express their anger at that man that they've had an issue with, whether it be a former boss, an ex-boyfriend, an ex-husband, a baby daddy, they then take all of that anger and they express it towards you because they believe that you're not going to go out here and give them some pushback. So they look for the person who will give them the least resistance, and that's why they go out here and express their anger towards that person. Now, many of these women in the workplace, they'll do this in a passive-aggressive fashion. They'll try to do things like, when they're a female boss, assigning a man all sorts of tasks and duties to overwhelm him. And I had to run into that at the science library, where I had said I wanted to try to help out with the section of books that didn't have any barcodes in them. So passively they gave me this task, but aggressively they didn't tell me that there was an entire whole 4 or 5 sections of books that were like this. And women will do stuff like that because they really are uncomfortable with you, because you represent a man, or in some cases just being a black man, you represent somebody who did somebody that did them dirty many years ago, and they want to subconsciously get revenge on you by assigning you tasks to try to overwhelm you in order to get you to leave, or they try to go out here and make you work hours that are just out of the way. All of these things are things that female bosses do because they can't directly fire you without a cause. So sometimes they'll go out here and do things to try to push you out of the job because they're uncomfortable with you. And they do these things again because they don't like the idea of having a man around, because they've had bad experiences with men in their personal lives and even their professional lives. So they oftentimes express their bias towards men because they don't want that man around them, because that man represents somebody who had power over them in the past. And the whole idea of you, this is their issue, but they have not worked that issue out for themselves. So this is something a lot of men have to deal with when they enter the workplace, is you have to deal with females who are out here who just, they have a lot of emotional baggage and personal baggage, and they'll go out here and take all of that baggage and try to dump it on you. And you're just here just trying to go out here and do your work and take care of business. But this female, this is her problem, and it's something that she needs to work out. But oftentimes, a lot of these women, they don't want to work this stuff out. So you oftentimes have to suffer as a result if you want to try to stay at that company. And that's something that many men have to deal with in the job, because they have no recourse, because if you try to go to HR, they will go out here and say you're the one who's the problem. Now, I also had to deal with this when I would go out here and do interviews, like I said before. And oftentimes when you're dealing with females, again, they project their own insecurities and feelings onto you, and that will lead to them asking harsh questions, or asking questions in a harsh tone, or being extremely distant in an interview and not really trying to engage or connect with you, because you remind them of somebody in their past who did them dirty. Because oftentimes women never forget the guy who did them wrong, but sadly that makes other men suffer out here, because she's still remembering the guy who did her dirty and not thinking about being professional towards the man standing in front of her. And because she's not thinking about being professional, about being in front of the man in front of her, that's why she acts out that way. And this is, again, all part of that bias many women have, because many women have issues with men from their past personal lives and professional lives. Now, some women also have female own group preference, and this is a natural thing because females like to protect their own group, and that's why they'll go out here and give women some of the more preferable tasks, or give them the more preferable projects, because they want to go out here and be able to give another woman that thing, because they don't want to compete against another man. So that's another reason why a lot of women have issues with men on the job and bias towards against men on the job, because they don't really want to compete against another man, because they know that because men are logical and the workplace is their natural domain, they won't be able to compete. So oftentimes they will try to do things to eliminate the competition on the job, and that means either doing things like trying to assign men the worst tasks and assign women the better tasks, or if they're in an interview situation, they will go out of their way to hire the woman over the man, because they don't want to compete against the man, because they know that sometimes, because the man is a logical thinker and he oftentimes can work the longer hours because his schedule is not compromised by things like children or family care, they can't compete against that man. And with him, again, in his natural domain, they know that they can't compete, so they'll oftentimes express their bias during the interview and try to prevent that man from getting hired. Now, in addition to these women going out here and using their own bias towards their gender to discriminate against men and their own issues to discriminate against men, you will oftentimes also have these older people in the workplace, and they will oftentimes express their bias against young people, especially young black men. Now, these older people I've run into, these baby boomers, these are some of the worst in the workplace because many of these baby boomers, they are very selfish and they are very greedy. And because these baby boomers are extremely selfish and greedy, these baby boomers, when they ever see a younger person in the workplace, they're not thinking of reaching to teach that young person. No, they've got this I've got mine, F you mentality. And because they've got this I've got mine, F you mentality, they believe that that it's all about them and they need to protect their spot. And because they're out to protect their spot, they don't want to go out here and teach another young person the ins and outs of the job. No, passively they will let them stay on the job, but then when they start to struggle because they have no support or guidance, they will aggressively work towards getting that man fired off the job or getting written up for punishment as related to not performing tasks on the job. So oftentimes these baby boomers, these older workers, they will oftentimes try to hang a young guy out to dry. And they will do this, again, as a passive-aggressive way to get that person out so that they can go out here and have all the jobs for their generation of people. And when they do that, what they do is they don't see how they're hurting themselves, because when you're on a job, you should be looking to prepare the next man for that spot, because you're not going to be in that spot forever. But you can't explain that to many of these older workers because they're old and set in their ways. And because they are old and set in their ways, they believe they are doing the job to the best of their ability, and they believe nobody else can come in and do it better. And they don't want anybody to come in and do it better because oftentimes many of these older workers, especially these boomers, are extremely mediocre, and they don't want to compete against younger talent, and they don't want to help develop younger talent in the workplace. This is something that happens in many workplaces where you've had older workers who have been in the same job for 15, 20, 25 years, and they have not moved up in any way, shape, or form. And because they are comfortable in their spot, they look to go out here and try to eliminate the young talent. And what that does is it hurts the company because it doesn't allow new people to come in and give the company a fresh perspective on things, and it doesn't allow the company to be able to grow and move forward in a productive fashion. And because you have many of these older workers in the workplace expressing their bias and against younger people, because some of these older workers, they're angry because they've messed up their youth. They're angry because things in their personal lives are not going right. They look at that younger person and they express contempt towards them. And that's something that they do because they just look at their lives and they're not really satisfied with their lives, and they want to go out here and sabotage this young kid as he's starting to get his footing in the workplace. And that's one of the things I have a real issue with, because I don't want to see a young kid, go out here and not get the help that they need. And because when I went to that messenger job back in 94, 95, and this guy, instead of him trying to help me out, he was just disrespectful to me, and then even called my own mother, talking about how I was so-called retarded. I mean, that was something that really angered me, because again, here you have an older man who could easily help a younger man try to get his first job as he's coming out of college, but instead of him trying to help, he tries to act in a contemptuous way. And I've run into this type of hostility oftentimes when I would go out for interviews, and I just would be absolutely disgusted by it, because when it comes down to young people, you want to give them as much help as you can, because those young people need all of the support and the guidance that they need in order to do this job, because somebody's got to take over when you retire. Somebody's got to take the next spot. And again, you're not, instead of you helping other people, you just wind up going out here pushing people away who could possibly help your business. And this is one of the things I have an issue with a lot of the boomers and the older workers. They really just want to create a fiefdom for themselves where they can just sit up and collect checks, but they don't understand that in order for the business to continue moving, you need young talent to come in, and you need to help young talent develop and grow, because each young talent that you help develop and grow, they can go on to do better things. And the whole thing is that's going to help you and your business, because these younger people, they can give you fresh perspective, and you can also teach and mentor them and help them hone a craft. So they're not really thinking about things because they're all about themselves and about what they can get, but it's about what you can give to others. And that's one of the problems that you have with those elders and many of these women in the workplace. They are all about self, and they're not about trying to give to somebody else, because it's not about what you can get in form as related to money in the workplace. It's about what you can give as related to your knowledge and your skills in order to help somebody else be able to hone and master their own skills and be able to continue maintaining the industry you're in and maintaining the craft you're in. So when I look at the whole situation as related to all of this workplace bias, whether it be the women out here discriminating against men, or many of these older workers going out here and discriminating against young men in the workplace, it is very detrimental and very counterproductive to a business. And a good, strong boss is going to shut that stuff down, because they understand that in order for this business to grow, you have to have everybody on the same page, and you have to have everybody working together. And a good boss, especially an older person, they really want to be able to continue building people's crafts up, building people's skills up, and helping somebody learn the game, because each person that you teach goes on to teach other people, and everybody who gets that wisdom and experience from you grows and becomes a better worker, and even goes on to start their own business. So it's not, a lot of these guys out here, again, they're really selfish and greedy, and I've run into a lot of that in my years out here trying to get work. And it was one of the things that prevented me from being able to have a civil service job that I probably would have had till right now. And that was one of the saddest parts that I had to experience when I was working at City College of New York. Was here you have this old black woman and this old white man, and instead of them thinking about trying to keep this library so it can continue to serve the students, all they were thinking about was serving themselves. And that's sad. That's a really sad thing, because I was really concerned about the students and giving them the best service and helping those students be able to compete in the future. But these people, they were only thinking about their pensions and thinking about where they wanted to be, because the woman wanted to bring another woman into the workplace, and the guy just wanted to have a smooth world where he didn't have to deal with his insecurities regarding black men. And this is, again, really where the saddest part about many of these women and these older people in the workplace. They really don't think about anybody else but themselves, and because they're not looking to serve other people in the workplace, they wind up making it where many of these businesses wind up swerving and crashing and burning. Now, if you want to request a video, you can donate to the Cash App, the PayPal, or the Patreon, and I will make that video for you. And if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the Isis series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy. You can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door takes on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess featuring a bonus pin-up and the other 2 books in the Cyber Goddess saga at online bookstores everywhere